future trends, deep insights, industry leaders. This is the iGaming Next podcast with your host, Karolina Pelc.
Welcome back to iGaming Next Online.
There's not just one goal, there's multiple goals. Ignore dilution if the deal's good, because you'll make more from a bigger pot.
It wasn't that people preferred the office or preferred remote. They actually preferred the option.
In other words, COVID-19 is giving us a glimpse into the future.
Hi, everyone. My name is Karolina Pelc. I'm a CEO of a company called SharedPlay, and I'm also a host for iGaming Next podcast, which you might have seen a couple of episodes already. Today, I have another female guest, which I'm thrilled to have, and a big role model, and a lady I look up to a lot, Britt Boeskov. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us here. I would like to start this with giving a little bit of Britt's background. Britt is currently a Chief Experience Officer at Kindred Group, formerly known as Unibet Group. She joined the group as a Management Trainee in 2005 and entered the Exec team in 2009, where she had held various roles, including Head of Marcom Services, COO, and Chief Program Officer. Britt holds a master's degree in Intercultural Communications and Management from Copenhagen Business School. She is also a non-executive director on the board of Racecourse Media Group and a mentor in the Rebus Women in Tech program. Super impressive background. I sometimes wonder how you can do all of these things at once. But yeah, Britt, today I wanted to ask, you've got an interesting and not so commonly heard executive title, Chief Experience Officer. Could you tell us a little bit about this role, about, in general, CX at Kindred, and where does it fit in your corporate structure?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for having me, Karolina. It's exciting to come and chat. The Chief Experience Officer is a strange role, bit of one of those fashion roles, but what we really discovered was that customer experience needs to have a very central place in our business in order for Kindred to grow and prosper in the future. And I was fortunate enough to be able to combine a range of teams and departments to form this team in 2019. And essentially I get to be accountable for what the customers think about what we do, which is sort of a very wide remit. But in practice, day to day, we have a customer experience team, a UX team, a strategic portfolio team, which has the big projects and capability building capacity. And we got our strategy planning team, and finally we got Kindred Futures, which some people may know as our sort of partnership wing. And together we really work towards bringing the outside in view on what we do for the customer and how we can improve it, and to make sure that we align those needs of the customer with our strategy, and that we really build to what the customer would like, and how we can help them have a great time with our products.
And I think that it's visible through many of your initiatives that they are indeed having a great time, and you really do know the customers well, thanks to that setup. So let me take it a little bit to the organizational sort of setup to facilitate that. I read in the Kindred blog that you've restructured the organization not so long ago, and it was fascinating to hear about the journeys and micro journeys and the key experiences. Can you describe this sort of approach that you decided to take, and also where did the inspiration for that came from?
Definitely. So I think a lot of our organizations are organized around skill sets. So, a marketing wing, a product wing, a tech wing. And within especially technology, many of our development tracks are then structured around the technical constraints. Some people know how to code one thing, some people know how to code something else, or some people look after certain systems. So then you organize according to that, and that's great. The trouble is that it's often the intersection between those things that can create a great customer experience. So what we set out to do, we'd always sort of struggled to how to work with our product owners, which manage the backlogs, and to say which ones of them should own what. And we kind of thought, isn't it sad that we can't organize around what the customer comes to do with us. If we could do that, if we could join all the people up who can help make a great join experience or great payment experience or a great play sports experience, maybe we could really get all that good brain juice in one place and get some strong results out of that. So we set out to do that. So my organization is the coordination point for a bunch of virtual teams, and the members of those virtual teams don't report to me or to my managers. They report through to tech and marketing and everywhere else. But essentially, we all rally around these experiences, and my teams are then coordinating and facilitating the backlogs to ensure that we focus on the right thing. But it was definitely a big step to take, and it's a complex setup. Working in a matrix organization is always a challenge. You get a lot of questions around responsibilities and decision making, and we always have to become better at that. But I think it's really allowed people to work together towards creating great results for customers, and we definitely want to continue on that path.
I think it's great, and I've always seen that gap that you're talking about between sort of almost things falling in between when there is no holistic view over. And I think cross-sell is one of those areas where it's very often visible, where one department owns the monetization in one vertical, the other one owns the pushing of the traffic, and who owns the middle, so
get split. So yeah, I think there's something good about trying to do that. But however you slice the cake, you're going to need a lot of work to listen to what the customers say and to check in on whether they actually enjoy what you're doing. So another great advantage of this model is that we've implemented the CX analytics mindset. So really being very serious about using the input we get from customers and to validate whether they actually do what they say they want to do, and whether they enjoy the features we release.
Yeah. And since the department that you probably, or correct me, maybe I'm wrong, but I would think that the department you work the closely with would be the product, and you still have also a CPO, executive role. So how do the two departments work together?
It's really interesting to know that of the 7 experiences we have, only 2 of them really relate to product, the play sports and play gaming. And that's probably a recognition of how complex our customer experience is these days, and how many other things need to help the customer to have a good time. But the 2 big experiences, play sports and play gaming, are of course very, very central to what the customer comes to do and what their intentions are. So we still have very strong product teams, and they are to a large degree completely in charge of the relationship with our third-party suppliers. We buy many of our products, and we have a strong communication through there, but we all rally around the same data set to try and find out what customers think of what we do and what we can do better. And then essentially my teams are coordinating the backlog management and performing some of the, for example, the UX activities and so forth. But still the product teams are, of course, extremely knowledge heavy on these products, and there's so many different parts of product management now that you need to really optimize also throughout the channels, and yeah, it's great to have the good and strong collaboration with that team.
So the most recent feature, for those that maybe haven't seen the news, I would like you to describe it, the Watch&Bet, how it works, but I'm mostly interested about sort of the development of this feature in the context of what we just talked about. How did the teams come together, and whether you had data that sort of pushed you towards developing this, or whether you validated with data afterwards. I think it's a super interesting example of showcasing your setup.
Yeah, definitely. It was a dream for me. I've always, I was in one of the first negotiations with our live streaming providers, and buying live streaming is super expensive. I don't know if you know that. It just costs a lot of money. It's media rights, and you get these in and you add them up, and you're like, here you go, customer. You can choose if you want to watch the game or if you want to bet, but can't do both at the same time. Sorry. And that's obviously a big miss. So I think that was one of these situations where maybe it wasn't the customers asking us, but we saw an opportunity for integrating, because the customers want to do things faster and in an easier and more fun way, and overlays are present everywhere. When you watch sports, you get lots of extra data information. So why shouldn't you be able to bet on it?
Yeah.
And I have to say, it's a classic example of non-linear innovation, because it really took a couple of stop and starts to get this going. It wasn't super easy. We tried to work with an external party. It wasn't quite easy to integrate. We had to make a lot of requests from our suppliers, both from the streaming and the product side. And we had to own a lot more of the connecting items and front-end layer to make it work. But now it's there and it's great. And the best thing is, of course, that our customers are very complimentary around this, and they really enjoy using the streams and betting at the same time.
It's one of those features that when it's already out there in live, it kind of feels like a no-brainer. Why haven't we seen this before? And hats off for launching this as first. I love it because it falls right spot on with all the trends that we are seeing, the rise of streaming. And I think a lot of different industries are trying to figure out the sort of monetization of spectators, and in our industry this is exactly what we're doing. So connecting the two experiences together, mind-blowing potential and opportunity for you guys. Any other sort of initiatives that you could talk about from that perspective, where the laser sharp sort of CX focus has driven the teams to come up with a product or feature?
Yeah, I think there's, in general, it is not just features that we do. It's a lot of removing pain points and cleaning things up, essentially. Yeah. But there are some really good things. We got the live casino lobby being rolled out with much more visibility of what's happening within the different live casino rooms, the activity and the number of people. That's really pleasant, and I think again that speaks to that sense of connection and the sense of what's going on in here.
Yeah.
And on top of that, there's some other elements that have made a big difference, which are our self-help sort of area, which is far better now. And people are not as interested in talking to a customer service agent as they were perhaps 10, 15 years ago when we started in the industry.
Yeah.
So it's really nice to be able to let people help themselves where possible. And also in the areas of verification, we've made some big changes to the quality and speed of document uploads, and getting over some of those hurdles that we know are a bit unpleasant for the customers, but you can really help them along if you want to. So those are some of the bigger ones, and then we got another juicy feature coming for the Euros, but it's going to go out in the next week or so. So I'm not at liberty to say yet, but it will definitely have to do with connectivity and engaging the players even more.
All right, I'm gonna look out for that. Very interesting.
Release.
Yeah. Super happy to hear about live casino as well, because I think I was always also a big advocate for the fact that, in a land-based venue, the data from the tables and what's happening in the moment is a big driver for customers to choose. So we should really reflect that, in online.
Yeah.
So I know that a big subject for you as a company in general is also RG, responsible gaming. And I remember, seeing the Rooney campaign for 32 Red in the past, being really impressed with the proactiveness of the approach. And now you've made this really bold statement that it's a big talking point in the industry, with goals around sort of making zero revenues from harmful gambling. So I wanted to understand, what does this actually mean in practice? How do you set out on approaching this? What's your sort of roadmap to get to that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a big challenge and a pretty bold one as well. Owning the problem of problem gambling is the first step for the industry, and it's taken us some years to get there. I think there's still been, for years we talked about, it's just a small percentage of our customers who suffer any problems. But then when you have 1 million active customers in a month, then you got to think that even a small percentage is a big number of real people. So it's very important that we take this seriously, and that we also apply really strong scientific approaches to this. And that's why we went out with this transparently, because everything we do will get questioned by media and by other areas. So we have to be brutally transparent to get anywhere and to get the conversation moving, because we know that the number is relatively low. We have now applied a methodology that's based on the DSM-5 sort of American approach to psychology and harm management. And I think it's very important that we work with a standard that can be understood by researchers, whether they come from psychiatry, psychology, social studies, or anywhere in politics. So you can go in and actually look at our algorithm to see whether we are being serious with this or whether we are being too easy on ourselves, and we're inviting researchers to do that so we can learn and improve it even more. And then, of course, we track it and we report it. And sometimes, you know, necessity is the mother of innovation. If you have to bring this thing down to zero, you will find a way. And I think that's the great thing about setting this target and being able to follow up on it, because it gets people thinking, what are the things we could do? And of course, the road to zero for us is really important. It takes a lot of effort, but we know we haven't solved the problems in the industry, even if we get to zero. So we do hope to support that with also having a good dialogue with other operators and what can be done, and to over time share tools that the customers can use for all of their gambling, sort of to measure everything that they do, and to use them to be safe in this environment.
I love the fact that you're leading the way in it, and that you're really sort of monetizing or capitalizing on your position to try to, you know, speak with a loud voice around it. And, you know, the transparency, as well, as you said, it kind of, you know, forces you to be accountable. So it's really
not super comfortable. I can say that honestly, because you'll get the headlines that you don't want to get right away when you stick your neck out like that. And I can understand if there are other operators who feel uncomfortable with that, but we think it's worth it, and we think it's if we can solve this problem and, you know, get sort of, you know, what Volvo did with the seat belt originally. I understand the idea was that they gave away sort of the concept of the seat belt, and that became a standard, and none of us really worry about putting on a seat belt today. It feels quite normal, right? But it saves so many people's lives. So we do hope that we can get to that kind of state.
So taking it back to your sort of organizational setup, this is supported within your sort of CX product and journeys setup in a certain extent, right? Because you've got the journey, I recall it being called Be in Control. So that I would expect takes some of these activities and initiatives inside of this area.
It does indeed. And I'm not allowed to have favorites, but I'm so glad that we invented the Be in Control experience, because it was quite easy to come up with the experiences like play sports, play gaming, join and leave, pay and withdraw. They're all the things you know. But then there was all these other things that traditionally had been defined from a very inside-out perspective. We need the customers to set their limits. We need the customers to verify. We need the customers to do this and that and check the boxes for GDPR purposes. But we'd never really thought about what that experience looked like from the customer side and how we could summarize that. And we summarized it as being in control, not just of your spend, but of your data and of your knowing where you are, knowing why you're being asked about information and why you have to jump through hoops as a customer to enjoy our products. So Be in Control is great, and it does hold all of the development streams that relate to both the responsible gambling products, authentication, verification, and various data protection measures.
Yeah, I wanted to say in the era of GDPR, sort of being in control is very important to not just our players, but any customers of any company. So
yes,
you know that. Thank you. Did you want to add something? Sorry if I interrupted.
No, it's so good.
So I wanted to, if you don't mind, take it a little bit, the spotlight from maybe Kindreds and the departments to Britt as an individual. And something that I love about your career journey is that you joined Kindred so long ago. It was in 2005, right? as a trainee. So can you tell us a little bit about your career journey throughout the years, and how did it develop, and what were the major sort of turning points?
Yeah, definitely. I'm still a trainee. I still consider myself a trainee because it's such a good way of saying, I'm still learning, and there's still going to be new things, new topics that I don't know about that I'm going to have to jump into head first. The difference now is that I get to support other people in their learning journey as well, which is really a great pleasure. But yeah, it started out by me joining as a management trainee. It was fairly unspecified, but it just meant kind of do the stuff other people don't have time to do, and sort of loosely connected with business development. And it was great. I remember one of my first projects was a televised poker tournament on the island of Åland, which is between Sweden and Finland. It's a pretty strange place, and then it was just crawling with Swedish celebrities that I didn't know at all. It was very funny. So I think being thrown deep into the what was back then the very hot product of poker, you could kind of see that there were other opportunities for gambling that were coming on. So from there on, I got to work with integrating new products, which I really, really liked and thought so challenging and interesting. And then I was put on a very sort of life-defining project, which was supposed to be a website refresh, but it wasn't, because our platform just couldn't do anything. That it was built for one product with a few markets, and we needed something completely different. So I think that was probably when I started being the role that I've been for the rest of my career, which is the in-between technology and business, whatever is, you could call it the mortar between the bricks or whatever. But that's definitely where that started. And that challenge took me on a great learning journey, where I built so much respect for our tech colleagues and everything they could do to help us out. If only we could explain what it was we on the business side wanted to have. So that was a huge change. And then, of course, as you know, with growing companies, things just happen. Like one day someone left and I was asked if I wanted their job, and it happened to be in acquisition marketing. So then I went into that space for a while. And then somebody else left and I had to take their role as an interim. And that was when I joined the executive team for the first time on a total interim basis. Single woman among 12 guys. And it felt strange, but also good, because you could feel that, we needed to make decisions and we needed to move the company forward. It was on a growth phase and a maturing phase. And it was right at a time where we lost France due to regulations, and that was a big setback for the business. So you could feel the need to claw back and become a company that could handle those new challenges. So that was huge. Eventually, I was asked to join as COO for the product side again. That was such a joy because I loved the product side, and by then I felt sort of warmed up to take that kind of leadership position, and had some amazing people working with me for the various product groups. So again, I wasn't maybe the specialist in casino or in poker or in sportsbook, but I had amazing people working with me for those things. And the later changes in my titles have been I left for my second maternity leave, and when I came back, I had handed the keys to the product side to one of my team members, and then I got to take on these strategic projects in our project portfolio. And project management sounds, I don't know, if it sounds like something that's being done everywhere, but for our industry, I think it's so important, because you need to coordinate across the whole business and build new capabilities as we develop. So really enjoyed that. And the last step, of course, was marrying that up with the customer experience discipline and truly bringing that to the center of what we do. So I have had some fun times, but always with the red thread of being in between all the other teams.
So I wanted to ask you, my initial question was whether there was any specific role that you enjoyed most, but from your enthusiasm, I kind of feel you probably enjoyed all of them.
All of them. And right now it's my current role. Absolutely. Because it just takes some of the most challenging items and allows me and my teams to really think what we can do to future-proof the business. So absolutely, it's been building up to that.
I am kind of similar because I also done both marketing and product, and in between, I love being the connector and in between. If I had to choose, it would most definitely be product, but I love the product marketing of things as well. So it's I'm similar in that aspect. So I know that you're running this campaign on Kindred, a site called Inspirational Women to showcase other women with inspirational journeys. I don't want to talk about the campaign because it's kind of self-explanatory and really, admire the company for doing things like that. But I have a question for you in relation to your growth at Kindred. Did you feel that they have done things that particularly empowered you to grow and progress? Or was it more a case of not standing in your way to a certain extent?
It's a good question. I think the trust that I've been given is amazing. And that's something the other women who are featured in that series mentioned as well, that, it's one thing if you progress because you're extremely skilled and you're doing a job really well and you become more and more senior. But when people trust you to take on something completely different because they believe you can transfer your energy and enthusiasm and skill set to something you don't know anything about, it's fantastic. You feel really supported as a person. And I hope we can do that to lots of people. So Kindred has done that many, many times over for me. And I hope we do it for as many of our colleagues as possible, not just female, but all colleagues, because it's something that can really change you and develop you when you are given the keys to something new.
Yeah, and I want to ask you for something that I realized, I'm struggling with to a certain extent, even though, I might come across like I have great confidence. And so when I do, especially in this new role of a startup founder, I find certain areas that I really question myself about and feel the imposter syndrome. And it's something people don't talk about a lot. So I wanted to ask you whether you have experiences across the years of your career and how did you handle it?
Yeah, I mean, imposter syndrome's this feeling that someone will call you out across the room and go, she shouldn't be in here, she doesn't know anything. Yeah. And I continue to experience doubts, absolutely. And over time I've come to reframe it. I remember somebody asked me in a panel about this some years ago, and I just thought it can't be such a bad thing. Because first of all, I believe if you experience imposter syndrome, you are on a learning journey. You're in the process of becoming something new. If you listen to the imposter syndrome, it's probably telling you something you need to learn. And all you need to do is not to panic about that and say, I got a license to learn. I can do this. I've learned other things in my life. Yeah. Now I got a license to learn this thing. And I can probably find people who can help me and support me with that journey. And then lastly, I would say that we do make some fallacies in our assumptions about what good leaders are. We still have this picture of someone who's extremely self-assured, who just shoots from the hip and makes the decisions, without consulting anyone or without asking. It doesn't fit well with the challenges of today. We need to redefine that and say, good leaders of today and tomorrow will probably be humble. They will consult with others. They will ask for advice and opinions. They won't believe that they know everything themselves. It's the only way we can invite diversity into our leadership paradigm. And I think it's about time. So the imposter syndrome probably tells you that you have some of those qualities that you're willing to question yourself.
All right. Well, that's good to hear. I'll make a note of that. And, I didn't ask this in a specific context of diversity because I think it can be both men and women that experience this, whether it's highlighted mostly for women. But I do know that the sort of subjects of diversity and inclusion are really important to you. You've been listed as one of the most influential women in gaming. You received the prestigious award for outstanding contribution to the industry. And I do see a lot of your activity in the field. So probably it's a question that is self-explanatory, but you do believe that it's important to raise sort of the voice in this subject and champion mentorship and other activities that are aimed at sort of diversity and inclusion.
Absolutely. Diversity and inclusion. I mean, we're not there yet. I would love to say we are, but we need to see the minorities not only women but other minorities rise up through the ranks. Women are not a minority, but they are a minority in the boardroom, and we need to over time shift that, and for the benefit of our industry and for the benefit of our business, not just for ourselves. So I think it's very important. You mentioned mentorship, which is key, and I really enjoy doing mentoring and learning from others as well. But I also think that in general, there's so much that we can benefit from as an industry if we get people's voices represented. It's a big area, it's a big topic. There's not one way of doing things. One of my mentoring engagements was I got introduced to this mentee, and she's got like a quant degree and a PhD in statistics, and she's an up-and-coming leader for her development teams. And I was just thinking, what can I possibly add to this woman's life? She seems like a genius. But it turned out that her challenges were exactly the challenges I had experienced as a young leader, with finding ways of making your decisions count and leading the team, managing difficult stakeholders and so forth. So there was lots to share. And I just think if we know that a lot of our challenges are shared, then it's easier to overcome them as well.
Yeah, I appreciate sometimes your very helpful advice. So thank you for lending a helpful hand when I need it.
Well, I appreciate that you set a fantastic example, Karolina, because I mean, yes, rising up through the ranks is one thing you can do in business, but starting your own business and being a founder is definitely one of the areas where there's a lack of diversity. So it's really great to see. So good to follow what you do.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And this is also one of the ideas where I'm trying to be quite public with it, because I do want to show the ups and downs so that there's a bit more visibility into how it looks for others, right? So it might just add some confidence for the women considering on the brink or trying to do something like that. You talked about a boardroom as well, and I'm not even asking this in the context of diversity, but just I know that you have been appointed a non-executive director for a media company, Racecourse Media Group. Can you tell us a little bit about that appointment? How do you marry this with your current full-time sort of employment in executive role? And what are the types of responsibilities that are needed? Because I think a lot of not just women, sort of less senior people aspire to roles like that, and they would like to have a little bit more idea of how to get there and what it entails.
Definitely, yeah. I'm very fortunate to have my INET role for Racecourse Media Group for the last 2 years. And for me, it was probably a recognition that my role is quite internal within Kindred, and I was missing a bit of the banter I used to have with the suppliers and other parties. So I thought I need to connect with another part of the industry. This was a fantastic opportunity, but the way I got there was quite funny. I started thinking about this and how exciting it could be, because we had some cool women on Kindred's board, and I thought, one day I'd like to be like that as well. And then I went to an event for Women on Boards, which is an organization that helps women get onto boards, not surprisingly. And what it's like coming to a networking event and you get your glass of wine and you're standing there, and there was a little flyer on the table, and it was like your road to the boardroom. And the first step said, "Have you told anyone of your ambition to become a director?" And I was like, oh gosh, yeah, we can start with that. So after that, I started explaining to people I knew in the industry that, I was potentially ready for this and interested, and that I would like to support a company with my knowledge from the gambling side, and maybe a company that didn't have that aspect, and turned out to be a good match with Racecourse Media Group. And of course, when I got the job description, my first reaction was, but I don't know enough about racing. Lo and behold, there's probably like 200 years worth of racing experience on that board, so they don't need that. So it's very important for board work to think about what other skills you can bring and what transferable skills you can bring, rather than thinking you have to be an expert on that company. So that's one perspective. The other perspective is it's non-operational. And for someone like me, who's always like trying to solve problems, really just day-to-day solve problems, that is a huge mind shift change. To think only from a strategic point of view and only from a governance point of view, but not try to do the executive team's job on their behalf. So it's a big change, very, very enjoyable and very interesting way of getting to know another business.
And I think that perspective can also help in your day-to-day work to sometimes learn how to just remove yourself from the hands-on sort of and just be strategic.
Yes, and you can get buried down in your day-to-day job. So this can give you energy and a new perspective on things. But you asked how you combine them, and I mean it's not super easy. I would say you got to plan very well ahead, timing-wise and calendar-wise, and just really hope that two things don't fall on top of each other.
That brings me to my next question, which kind of the wrapping up questions of my podcast is pretty much the only thing that keeps them consistent, because, you know, I kind of try to tailor them to each guest, but I do ask everyone around questions around work-life balance and their routines, and where there are some guests that sort of outright admitted that work-life balance does not exist for them. There are some that say they don't believe in work-life balance, and some that said that it means different things for different people. I'm still in a stage where I'm trying to find what I call, or what I've heard called, work-mom balance. I don't really have space for the life outside of that. But, you know, I'm interested to see how you feel about it.
Yeah, I think work-life balance is, for me, it's not a state, it's an act, it's a balancing act. And it doesn't mean it stands still, and there will be days where it swings to one side and days where it swings to another side. You know, engaging in that balancing act is increasingly important as you progress, because otherwise you burn out and you don't enjoy what you do. But more importantly, you set a terrible example for everybody else. So the more senior you are, the more responsible I believe you are for showing a decent effort in balancing your life and work, and enjoying both. And I'm just very pleased that at Kindred I've had some amazing role models, including my boss Henrik, who just does this. And when the CEO does it, then you don't feel like you have to ask for permission in the same way. Then you make it work somehow. And I think that's really helpful. And I can only hope that others will do that over time. And when you're a mom, of course, there's all the feelings of guilt and, you know, things you should have done. I was homeschooling 2 kids for many months during the past year, and it was not easy. And there were really days where I did not balance anything very well. But I think it was a great sort of sharing challenge, because many of my colleagues had the same problems. I think by sharing what I did and didn't do because of it, hopefully others felt more safe in the knowledge that they were not alone.
Sure, I love the reference to balance. I mean, it's obvious, but I never thought of it like that. So I think that's another note to make. Now, in terms of sort of calendars not crashing and, you know, time management, focus management, I'm a big fan of all kind of different methodologies, techniques. I sometimes even do trainings around that. I'm one of those OCD sort of automated people where I have to-do list connected with Monday.com and Slack and so on. You know, I'm interested in how other people manage it, because I probably take it slightly too far, but
I don't think so. I think whatever works is a really good thing. I have a rule around emails that I really try to answer as many emails in person as instead of with another email, because often things get lost, or, you know, you escalate something instead of de-escalating the topic. And then in general, I organize my time in focus slots rather than to-do lists. I more say, you know, this on Monday I focus on this topic, on Tuesday I focus on that topic, and my goal is that by the end of the day I feel that I've moved that topic in a good direction, not that I'm done with it. And that usually helps get things into a good space.
I think that's great. I'm a Kanban board person and still to-do list, but I also try to get like the highlight of the day to each day to make sure that I leave the day with feeling feeling of accomplishment. So
yeah.
Right, Britt, thank you so much for coming today. I think it was great to speak to you. We're both based in London, so I'm hoping, the circumstances quickly changing, we can meet in person and grab a glass of wine or tea. Good luck to future releases. We're going to be watching next week for sure to see what you guys cooked up for upcoming Euros. And yeah, thank you again.
Thank you very much, Karolina.
Thank you.